Timeless 106.1 FM, KFFB. This is Bob Connell. Thanks so much for joining us for another edition of our open mic program. And our guest is Congressman French Hill. And Congressman, as always, French, thanks so much for taking time and talking with us.
Bob, great to be with you. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, there's been so much talk about the protests in Arkansas, and I think it even made a national blip about the Walmart closing 4 stores and a Sam's Club. Can you address that just a little bit, what's going on there?
Yeah, this was inconvenient to a lot of people Sunday. If you're going to have a good protest, you want to try to encourage people to come over to your point of view. Well, you don't do that by shutting down every mom and dad and their family on Sunday afternoon trying to go get the week's groceries in the middle of the day by blocking their entry to a Walmart. Just terrible public relations idea, and the police just let them be there on private property. The right way to handle it would have been protesters out on the sidewalk, on the public sidewalk, and that would have been fine. Nobody would have said anything about it. But they threatened people. They blocked action to the stores, and they were, all about defunding the police and even defunding Walmart. Walmart's the largest employer in the United States. So many people have gotten their start in life by working at a Walmart, including the CEO of Walmart, who was a stock clerk in the warehouse when he first was in college.
So and that kind of tells you where we've come a little bit. This is kind of some of that doesn't even make sense. Many people are saying, why would you try to hurt people shopping, which that's something that we've brought up before. Some of these cities where they've burned down buildings and businesses, and even they can't get their groceries or their pharmacy in that area, and they don't have means to go somewhere else. So it's really hurting the locals. It's a sad situation.
Well, looting and burning things down does not honor the memory of George Floyd or try to get a more responsive, more fair community policing or protecting everyone's rights to equal justice under the law. It does the opposite. If you want to protest, let's follow the rules and express your views safely under the First Amendment and not go on private property and threaten people from doing their grocery shopping on a Sunday afternoon.
Now, there was an executive order by President Trump about this police. Explain a little bit what you see in this executive order and what you think might be coming about police reform.
Well, I was pleased that President Trump immediately met with the families of that have lost a family member in this most recent set of tragic deaths like we've witnessed recently, including the murder of George Floyd. And so President Trump stepped up and took some of the best ideas that have been out there, even dating back to the Obama administration that President Obama didn't take any action on, to improve community policing. So he supports grant funding for those enforcement agencies that only meet high standards, which will include better training, better accreditation, better policies on how to de-escalate crises, and have very strong use of force standards in that police department. I think he's on the right track there, and I think that's the kind of approach that you can get bipartisan support on in the House and Senate. I'm actually somewhat optimistic that with leadership from the president, leadership from Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, we can get a bipartisan bill that contains excellent ideas that will give our communities more tools to have better, more fair, more transparent, more trusted community policing relationships.
When you look at this, some of this is grant program probably will be part of this. Explain how that will work for helping police to retrain or get better training.
Well, right now, and we do a lot of help to all the police in our area in the 2nd Congressional District. We help them apply for grants for equipment that they need. And if they have the right policies and if they have the right training, then the Department of Justice would grant them more access to some of those grant funds so they get the equipment they need and the extra training that they need. I think it's a carrot approach that could be a good one. It would encourage the use of body cameras, for example. I would encourage the use of, as I say, strict guidance on policies that can de-escalate crises and how to use deadly force.
When you look at the police reform, is that something that you think that is going to go forward easier now than it has in the past when it's been talked about?
I think so. I remember distinctly being a aide to President George H.W. Bush on the White House staff in 1992 when the verdicts in the Rodney King case came down in Los Angeles. And all of South Side Los Angeles was destroyed in some of the most massive rioting and fires you've ever seen. When you think about it, if you're an African-American citizen in this country, have things changed mightily in terms of fairness and good training and good rules around our police department. So I understand why people were protesting. I really do. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And I believe that this will culminate, potentially. I'm optimistic. I'm knocking on wood as we talk, that we can have a bipartisan support for community police improvements. President Obama had a big task force back in 2014 and 2015, the 21st Century Policing Task Force. But I never saw him bring any legislation to Capitol Hill from that task force. Others have studied it. So this is a chance for us to really get improvements made.
You know, I did see one thing that was brought up, some talking heads, of course. Everybody's got an opinion on some of these networks. But they did at least put in positive light that President Trump did have prison reform. And this is something that was talked about for generations, I guess. And that did occur. So police reform should be the next step. And they think that this is something that can be done and be adjusted, which if it needs to be, it needs to do.
Look, President Trump has worked to help improve education and improve poverty in so many ways. The First Step Act helps people come out of prison with drug and alcohol ability, a plan for getting a job, transitional housing. These are things we do here in Arkansas with nonprofit groups like the good work of Muskie Harris or the Exodus Project. So many good people doing that. But that's what the First Step does. People have tried to do that for years. President Obama didn't get it done. President Trump got it done. He got that done with strong bipartisan support. He created opportunity zones for both rural America and urban America in the most poor census tracts to have new investment, new jobs, new opportunity. And then he's made a major investment in supporting education, attainment for people who are both coming out of incarceration or from low income. So for all this rhetoric I see on television, President Trump has worked hard to bring our poorest citizens opportunity, our poorest geographies opportunity, and it paid off. As you know, in February, we had the lowest Hispanic unemployment rate in the history, the lowest African-American unemployment rate in history. And the pandemic has thrown our economy for a spin, but we're working to get that corrected and get back to work.
When you look at the pandemic, I think we're making some improvements. As you know, this coming Saturday, which is actually in Rosebud, Arkansas, Summerfest. We're going to start it on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And that's the very first festival in Arkansas, I believe, at least that we're aware of, that is going to start way back. But that's going by the guidelines of the Arkansas Health Department. And I think this is an important step for Arkansas getting back on the move as well.
So we are back to move. I know that people are getting back to work. We had good numbers in airplane flights, good numbers in restaurants opening. We created 2.5 million jobs in May. So the economy is opening back. We just need to keep that momentum.
Well, Congressman, I appreciate you taking time and talking with us. It is another week we get to talk, and I tell you, it seems like every week there's something big we're talking about. Hopefully we'll just have a normal week next week.
Bob, I enjoy being with you. Thanks for the invitation.